In this day of notes, we are going to use what we call the half angle identities. So we have the sine of theta over 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 1 minus cosine theta over 2. And you choose the plus or minus depending on theta. So if theta is in the first quadrant with sine, you would choose the positive. Sine's negative in the third quadrant, so if you had an angle that was in the third quadrant, you'd pick the negative sign. So this plus or minus depends on what quadrant your angle is in to begin with. Cosine of theta over 2 is plus or minus. Again, you choose plus or minus depending on what quadrant you're in. The square root of 1 plus cosine of theta over 2. And our tangent has 3 different options. You could do the plus or minus where you'd have to pick, or you could just do the 1 minus cosine over sine, or sine over 1 plus cosine. Again, you can use any one of those that you want. In example 1, we want to find the exact value of the cosine of 112.5 degrees. So if we want to use the half angle formulas for this, we need to change this to the cosine. And then to figure out what 112.5 is as a theta over 2, we can multiply 112.5 by 2. And multiplying it by 2 will give us 225 divided by 2. So the same thing, 112.5 is the same as 225 over 2. But now we have it as a half angle formula, where we have an angle on the top divided by 2. Now, because 112.5 is in the second quadrant, right, it's less than 180 but bigger than 90, we are going to be choosing a negative for our cosine. So we have a negative square root of 1 plus the cosine of 225 degrees divided by 2. And then what we need to do is we actually have to evaluate the cosine of 225 degrees. So let's think about that. 225 is going to be in our third quadrant. So if this is 225 and this is 180, our reference angle that we have in here is 45 degrees. So if we want the cosine of this 45 degrees, cosine is going to be in the negative direction, so it's going to be a negative square root of 2 over 2. So we can rewrite this as negative square root of 1 minus the square root of 2 over 2, all divided by 2. And from here, it's just a matter of simplifying. So I can multiply by 2 over 2. So if I multiply the top by 2 and I multiply the bottom by 2, then I just get rid of this fraction that I have here. You could get common denominators and then actually divide it out. There's a couple different ways to approach how to simplify this. So then I get negative square root. I would have to distribute this 2 to the 1, which would give me 2. And then I'd have to distribute the 2 to negative square root of 2 over 2, which cancels this 2 and this 2 out, leaving me with just a minus square root of 2, then all over 4. I can take the square root of both the top and the bottom. So I'd have negative square root of 2 minus the square root of 2 all over the square root of 4, which is just 2. And this is my final simplified answer. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'd like you to do the next one, to try this, and I'm going to help you get started with it. We want to find the exact value of the tangent of 7 pi over 12. So the tangent of 7 pi over 12, we need to change this to a half angle identity. So just like we did before, we would want to multiply 7 pi over 12 by 2. Multiplying 7 pi over 12 by 2, remember this would become a 1, cancel would become a 6, we'd get 7 pi over 6. So this is the same thing as the tangent as 7 pi over 6 divided by 2. And then you can go ahead and use the tangent half angle identities. Remember, there are 3 of them. You can use whichever one you want. And then when you get done, so now pause it, unpause it when you're ready to check your answer. If you did this one correctly, you should get negative 1 over 2 minus the square root of 3. If you have questions on how to get there, please let me know.